What's up guys, it's Aaronitmar. Today I want to sort of discuss and I guess summarize an interview that was done with Smash director Masahiro Sakurai for the Nintendo Dream magazine over in Japan. Now before I get into the actual interview, I want to give a big thank you to the Source Gaming team for translating this interview from Japanese into English. Over the last couple years they've been doing this a lot, translating interviews with Sakurai specifically, I guess from what I've seen, discussing Smash. And so I really want to give them a big thank you for all of the hard work that they do. They do great work. So down in the description is a link to their website with the full article for this video, as well as a link to their Twitter. Go and follow them. They do awesome stuff. Now with that said, this interview specifically was Sakurai discussing the development of all 7 of the DLC characters at length. So we're going to be talking about each character for just a little bit. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it. So the development team knew very early on that Mewtwo was one of the most popular non-returning veterans, and so it made the most sense to add him first as DLC. His design concept really didn't change a ton from Melee because, even in Melee, he was a glass cannon, he was incredibly powerful, and yet he's so light that he's really easy to kill. So those design aspects sort of carried over into Smash 4. Obviously some updates were made, but for the most part that stayed consistent. Sakurai also mentions how he decided upon Mega Mewtwo Y for Mewtwo's final Smash. Basically, he said that Mega Mewtwo X is a very physically offensive character, and in the context of Smash, Mewtwo really doesn't work that way. He's pretty special based. So it made sense for Mega Mewtwo Y to be his transformation and for him to use Side Strike for his final Smash. Lucas was also a very popular choice for returning veterans. He talks about how he utilized Nest as a base for Lucas during Brawl's development, and then again says that they use Nest as a base this time around. I think that's really cool because it offers just a little bit of insight into the development process and sort of how these characters were developed, and then it also of course sort of emphasizes that Lucas is always going to be a semi-clone of Nest at some point or another. There wasn't a whole lot to discuss on Lucas, but the one thing they did touch on was Lucas's final Smash, which is drastically changed from Brawl. In Brawl, he used PK Starstorm and meteors rained down on the entire stage completely, just massacring opponents. This time around, his final Smash is more of a controllable column of meteors, and they did that because the 3DS could not handle what the Brawl variant of the final Smash was, so they sort of changed it while also keeping it sort of the same. Other than that, there just wasn't a lot to talk about concerning Lucas. With Roy, a ton of his design concepts were adjusted since his appearance in Melee. Because he was a direct Marth clone in that game, it was really inconsistent for his most powerful point to be his sword's hilt. While this concept actually remained, they had Roy hold his sword in a reverse grip so that way it actually made more sense and it allowed him to actually utilize this strength. In Melee, I don't know if you guys know, his hilt really wasn't the best point. You know, there's a joke that Roy has a wet noodle in Melee because literally you can swing your sword at an enemy and it just would not hurt them at all. Obviously, it's sort of Marth's Tipper but next to his hand, and that means that the person literally needs to be on top of you for it to work. So they changed it up so that way, at least this time, there's more of an opportunity for you to hit that strong point. As far as his actual appearance, Sakurai jokes that Roy's new look definitely gives off a Tales series vibe, but then of course that makes sense because a lot of the modelers also worked on the Tales series and then worked on Roy. Finally, he talks about how most of Roy's moves are actually more Smash originals than based off of his Fire Emblem appearances. His final Smash is definitely a reference to his appearance in Fire Emblem Binding Blade, but most of his other moves were created specifically for Smash, which I think is really neat. Most characters can have all of their moves pinpointed to something in their games or their representation, so it's kind of refreshing to have a completely unique character within Smash. Moving away from the veterans, let's talk about Ryu. Now from the get-go, Sakurai wanted Ryu to have light and heavy attacks as well as the ability to combo, just like he does in Street Fighter. While talking about the special command inputs for Ryu's special moves, he talks about the need to balance the command input and the non-command input versions of moves. Because the command inputs are harder, and there needs to be a reward for taking the extra time to perform that variant. So as a result, those moves are far more powerful than their regular B move versions. However, the need to balance the non-command input versions is also there, because you would be punishing players who don't or can't use the command input version of the move by starting them out with a completely weaker move by default. Now obviously, those moves are still weaker, but they're not too weak because otherwise no one would use them, or no one would play as Ryu in the first place because he's too hard of a character. It's really cool to read about Sakurai talking about Ryu's design because he says it completely redesigned the Smash system they had in place. Command inputs exist for no other character, which means they worked tirelessly to get them to work specifically for Ryu. Finally, Sakurai briefly discusses Ryu having 2 final smashes. Initially, Shin Shoryuken was the only final smash, but he felt it would suck if you fought your opponents to earn that smash ball, just for the move to whiff barely because you need to be right on top of the opponent. So he added Shinku Hadoken for a weaker but ranged final smash as well. This also matches the Street Fighter concept because players in that game can select their special moves, so it was a very, very good fit for this character. When Sakurai considered adding a character from the Final Fantasy series, there was really only one choice. Cloud is by far the most popular character from that series. Many people were shocked because Cloud has never appeared on a Nintendo console, but Sakurai was never really too bothered by this idea. He thinks we should basically ignore the console wars altogether and add characters which enjoy the most popularity and simply enjoy the game. As far as design goes, Cloud is often depicted as almost too powerful, so Sakurai had to keep this in mind while developing it. The result was slow startup but high power moves, and that just seemed to be the perfect match. Sakurai thought that Cloud would be appealing to new players, so he made him a bit easier to use. That's why, for example, his limit break doesn't reset if the player gets hit while charging it. For example, if you're charging up Samus's neutral B charge shot and you get hit during that, you have to start over from the very beginning. But with Cloud, you can charge up his limit, get hit, and then you can continue to charge from whatever point you got hit at. It just stops, it doesn't reset. It was also a challenge designing his actual appearance because Final Fantasy's been heading in a photorealistic direction and Smash is not like that at all. But personally, I'm pretty pleased with how Cloud looks in the game. I wasn't at first based on his actual art, but now I'm rather pleased. He seems to have a good fit. Now, right out of the gate, Sakurai admits that adding Corrin was a marketing strategy, and that he was worried adding yet another Fire Emblem character would prove not only difficult, but also unpopular. However, he talked to the Fire Emblem Fates developers, and they shared some ideas with him, and that changed his mind completely about the character. An important part of Corrin's playstyle is his ability to transform into a dragon at will, and we can obviously see that in the final product. Now, just like with Ryu, the main goal with Bayonetta was to ensure that her style and feel from her original games was maintained. Things such as dodging mid-attack and continuing a combo are staples within the Bayonetta games, but at the same time, this would make her completely overpowered if it functioned one-to-one like that in Smash. This is why Witch Time became a down B counter type move rather than part of her normal dodge like it is in the games. Sakurai also took care to ensure that she could do the combos, but he made sure that none of them were guaranteed or inescapable at all. You can definitely get out of them and they're never going to immediately kill you. Although, from what we've seen in competitive so far, that might not be held true. And finally, of course, they had to discuss Bayonetta's attire, because Sakurai had to make sure that it met the E rating of the game. Bayonetta wears very revealing clothing, so they had to sort of jump through some hoops and do a little bit of redesigning in order to make sure that she would fit in the game as well as be acceptable. So go ahead and take a look in the description for the full article. I've only summarized a bit of the most interesting parts to me, but there's quite a bit that I didn't touch on and that I find very interesting. And also, let me know down in the comments how you think Sakurai did with designing all of the DLC, both the returning veterans as well as the 4 brand new characters. With that, guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button, and of course, I'll be back with some more Super Smash Bros. Content in the future. Thanks, guys, and have a fantastic day.
Time!